Hello model builders and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to do a review of the 1970 Boss 302 from Monogram / Revell, and I'll give you a tour of this thing and show you how it goes together and give you my impressions of it. Okay, so this version is from 1991, and this kit goes all the way back to 1981 when it was first released as a Boss 429 kit, and then it went through a couple of versions of that until it was reconfigured, had some new parts added, and in 1991, 10 years later, they came out with the Boss 302 version. And this was last reissued in 2011. Revell has purchased all of Monogram's tools, and so they released these on their schedule. But you can find these things on swap meets and on eBay very easy. They've been reissued, umpteen times in all kinds of different box art. So if you want the 429 or the 302 version, they're out there. They're not that hard to find. And I bought this one on eBay. Got it on a deal because the box was pretty hammered, and it came still sealed in the bag, not missing any parts. And so we decided to go ahead and do a build on it. So I've built a bunch of these Mustangs because they are essentially the same car underneath. The 69 Boss 302, the Shelby and Shelby convertible, and this car are all utilizing the same architecture underneath, basically. I'll show you that here in a minute. But it's a nice kit. It's very easy to assemble for the most part, and I'll talk to you about some of the flaws on mine and how they came to be. Quick recap for those who don't watch my videos regularly. I am a out-of-the-box model builder. I tend not to do anything extra. There's no plumbed or wired engines on my kits, no custom body work, no special part swapping except for maybe wheels and tires usually. So what you see is what you get, or what you can get, with a decent amount of talent and skill. Okay, so the exterior we're going to start with on this thing, and it is a pretty nicely proportioned body. Looks the part. I don't really have any complaints on it. I am not an expert on Mustangs, so if there is anything that is not 100% correct, you guys are going to have to point that out in the comments. Assembly is generally pretty good for the body, except for the front and rear clips, and we're going to talk about those now. As you can see here, I have a pretty massive gap on there, and that is more a result of my having trouble with my glue that I think is getting old and not working too well. And I had put that together, and that gap was pretty closed up, and I left it alone thinking it was dry, and it wasn't, and that gap opened up. But now it's so rigidly mounted here at the top that I don't want to mess with it. So it's going to go in the display case with the driver's side facing out. That'll solve that problem. You can see here on this side it doesn't fit too bad. And a guy with a little bit more time and skill that wants to sand and fit those corners a little more precisely would be rewarded with a much better fitting front end. The only part of this kit that I think does not look quite right is the front end. There's something goofy with the headlights and the bezels and everything, and I think that translates right from the box art. You can see here it just kind of looks a little frog-eyed, and I don't know why that is. But it's something that's just a little bit off with that, and I'm not sure what the cause is. But that's my only real criticism of this kit. Other than that, I think it looks like a proper Mustang should. As for the back end, the rear valance also has some fit issues, and I'll get to that, the reason for that here when we do the undercarriage. There is a reason for it, and it's correctable. The spoiler is a little fiddly to put on because the stands are so small, and I have left this loose because it's got some pretty small glue points that you run the risk of ruining all your good paintwork if you don't get it right. So I left this removable. It just sits on there so nice it doesn't really even need to be glued as a static item anyway. The decals are, well, they're fun. The side ones aren't too bad. This is an old kit, so my decals are a little old. So some of the problems I had are probably because of that. And you'll see here that there's a little cloudiness around the edges, and that's because these are getting old and a little dry. A newer version of this kit, of course, is not going to have those problems. The front is the most difficult part to do, and you have to paint on the black here in the center, and then the striping, the outer stripes, there's also inner stripes, and they will cover your gap between your blue and your black and help make that nice and straight if you haven't masked it perfectly. But it is a little bit of a fiddly process to get because you've got this, power bulge in the hood to get width, and also back here these two sides have a junction where they come together. That's one mine was a little bit difficult to get right. They wanted to fight me there and to get things to fit and look straight. It didn't quite come together the way I had hoped. Also, you want to be cautious of these stripes because they are supposed to stop at the top of the fenders, like that side. But this side wraps over, and I didn't catch it in time to trim it back, so that's my fault. The side decals, however, fit as they should and are perfectly fine. There is the Boss license plates you can put on, but I didn't care for those, so I grabbed one out of my Boss 302 kit and put that on the back. And the only other decals that come in the kit are for the engine, which we're going to do a little look at now. And they give you this nice little detail decal for the end of the valve cover. But that's it. You don't get anything for the battery or the shock tower decals or anything like that. They come in some of the newer kits. The engine on this is, of course, 302, which is kind of a semi sort of Cleveland, not really engine. And they did a really nice job on this. I think the detail is pretty darn good. It doesn't necessarily look super spectacular when you're looking at the parts on the tree or putting it together, but the finished product, I think, comes out looking really good. You get a two-piece Holley carburetor, upper radiator hose, separate oil filter. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. The battery's separate. The radiator is separate in the top tank. The firewall detail is pretty minimal. They give you a master cylinder and a booster, and that's about it. So let me flip this thing upside down and we'll have a look at the undercarriage. All right, the undercarriage is simple yet kind of detailed. So what we have here is Monogram does a very unusual thing. They have a interior tub, and then they have a perimeter frame chassis piece. So what that does is it gives you the look of these separate frame rails and torque boxes, which is kind of nice. It works out pretty good. There is a kind of an unsightly gap, though, down in here. The chassis detail is not extensive. I've picked a lot of it out here with paint, but it's all essentially one molded piece that you glue into the frame. And the same with the rear. It's the drive shaft, rear axle, springs, etc. all together. The only thing that's separate is the rear shock absorbers. The mufflers have these nice details. They molded in the Ford logo and the part number like the originals would have had. That's kind of a cool touch. Gas tank is integral with the floor pan. Now, the rear valance, I wanted to talk about these little gaps here. There's a problem with this valance piece in that it has the reverse lights are here, and on the back side there's a receptacle kind of sticking out there for those reverse lights. And you either have to trim that down or cut off the frame rail extensions behind the leaf spring to get enough room for them to fit. I did do the frame rail removal and they got better, but I didn't take quite enough off. And so that's what I wound up with. I thought I had taken enough off, but I just didn't. But before I did that, these were not going to fit, no way. So that was kind of an issue. That's really the only real fit problem I had with this, other than the front nose piece, which I had the same problem with the nose piece on the Boss 302 1969 version. But the chassis can be turned into a nice piece with a little bit of paintwork and some careful detailing. And the interior is not super detailed. It is a one-piece tub. It's got separate front seats. The dashboard is all one piece. Steering wheel column is part of the dash. Shifter is separate. It's a manual transmission. And one nice touch is you do get these separate armrests, as you can see on the far door there, which is an unusual thing. You don't see that very often in these kits. Very simple. Doesn't take long to put it together. Dash detail is okay. If you're going to try to pick out the gauges with paint, you're going to struggle, I think, with that. There are no decals for the gauges in this version of the kit. However, newer ones might have it, as I believe my 69 Boss 302 kit from Revell did have that. So overall, it's not bad. I like monogram kits. They tend to go together very easily, very quickly, once you have all the paintwork done. But this kit, like the 69, requires you to paint the black on the hood. The 69 kit comes with a decal for the trunk, where this one does not, so I had to mask that off and paint that black as well. This is a Tamiya color. I'm sorry, I don't have the name of it, but you can find it on the color chart very easily. It's the one that looks like it's grabber blue. It's not called that, though. And there you have it. The 1970 Boss 302 Mustang from Monogram / Revell. Very easy kit to put together. If you're fairly new to the hobby, this is not a bad one to do. It's got good proportions. No wheel and tire choices other than what you see here. It does come with some custom parts. There's a kind of a goofy dragster style hood scoop that you can put on, a different induction system, and that's about it. There's no interior options for seats or a roll bar or anything like that. This kit really was designed and engineered and released as to build a stock car. So anything extra that's in there is just going to be a little bit of bling that you can use, or parts that you can use on something else maybe in the future. So that's my review of the Monogram Boss 302 1970 version. If you have any questions about the construction of this kit, the way I built it, please drop them below. Check out my other Ford and Ford Mustang model kit videos and reviews. And I look forward to talking to you again really soon. Thanks for watching.